Hi there, my name is Gemma O'Donoghue and I'm the Careers Consultant for International Students at the University of Southampton. CVs are something that can take up way too much time, so in this video we'll cover the basics on how to tailor a professional CV effectively without wasting too much time. Let's start from the beginning and keep things simple. Why do employers still use CVs? It's not because they're perfect, they're just the best system we've got, for now, to quickly gather enough information to decide whether it's worth spending an hour interviewing somebody or more, or if it's going to waste both your time. Maybe in the future somebody will find a better way, but for now, most employers still use CVs, so let's work with them. But why do we get so many different opinions on what a CV should look like? Some people say it must be 1 page, others prefer 2 or maybe even more. Some will always use a profile, while others have been told never to include one. We've all been given conflicting views on what a CV should look like, and that's very confusing and frustrating. But if you think about it, seeing that this variety of advice gets given itself just proves to us that CV writing is a subjective process. At least a large part of it is. What this really means is that there are no universal rules. Employers are just people, like you and me, each with their own preferences, biases, and interpretations. What one person wants in a CV, another might reject. So, instead of trying to please everyone, let's focus on the part that's not subjective, the bottom line, the facts. What matters the most? And that's helping the person who's reading your CV find what they need quickly and clearly. So what are recruiters actually doing with your CV? Most CVs are read first by someone other than the hiring manager. That's often a recruiter or someone in HR, i.e. the person who has to reduce the high number of CVs down to a smaller number, a manageable number of good ones to pass on to the hiring manager. This person may not fully understand the role that you're applying for. They will likely be working on loads of jobs and probably won't be an expert in any of them. Instead, they're working with the information they've been given, which could be a job description or an advert, or maybe a conversation with the hiring manager. The first screening could also be done alternatively by an ATS, that's applicant tracking software. But what's the approach? Well, either way, it's simple. It's keyword matching and evidence gathering. So whether it's a person or an ATS tool, the process is pretty much the same. They scan your CV for words and phrases that match a job description. That's why it's so important to include relevant keywords near the top of your CV. You want the person scanning it, who has limited time and knowledge, to quickly spot the evidence that you might be a good fit for the job. Remember, the CV isn't going to get you an offer, it just has one job to do, and that is to get you to the next stage, which is usually the interview. Some research shows that on average, a recruiter will spend less than 4 seconds scan reading a CV initially. Hang on a minute, what research? I've seen research that says it's 7 seconds. Or was that 10 seconds? If you do an online search, you'll probably find a few different numbers for this, but the point is they don't spend long. I mean, who would if you've got hundreds of CVs to read? The reader will probably give about as much time as it takes to scan read the first part of the CV, and then some research will also tell you that most people focus on the left-hand side of the page. Well, this does make sense because we read top to bottom, left to right in the English language. We don't need to make this too complicated. But what this means for us, the candidate, is that if your CV doesn't offer the right clues, that's the keywords or phrases, the matches, within the first few seconds, you could easily get rejected at the first stage and you might not even know about it. You might just not hear back. This is why personally I like including a profile or summary section at the top, because it allows you to summarise your skills and relevance to the job quickly and the person's going to read it straight away. But remember, this is my personal opinion, gained from the experience that I've had of reading CVs. I naturally head to the top of the page and quickly make some sort of subconscious decision about whether to read on or pay attention for the rest of the page. That said, some people don't use profiles, and that can be fine too. What matters is that you get the key information early and visible and relevant to the job that you are applying for. Your CV will likely go through 2 screenings. First, a quick scan by somebody, often with limited knowledge on the role, who's working on many different jobs and just trying to reduce the number of applications. So they'll be reading it quickly. And then they'll pass it on for a more detailed read by the hiring manager. This is the person who probably would interview you and would understand the role much more deeply. So what this means for us is if you only focus on the keywords for the first screening, but don't provide strong examples or context for the second reader, you could easily get rejected. And this is what happens when people rely too heavily on Gen AI to write their CVs. So you need to make sure your CV passes the initial scan with keywords, clarity and relevance, but also impresses on deeper inspection with good quality evidence that's related to you, but more importantly, that is authentic. And this is the word that we keep hearing with feedback from hiring managers who are very frustrated with reading AI generated CVs for job applications. When you're choosing which keywords and phrases to tailor your CV with, try imagining that you are the employer. Take a job description or an advert and ask yourself, if I were hiring for this role, what keywords and phrases would I be looking for? Transferable skills like communication and teamwork are very important, but they can also be generic, so everybody claims they have them and all roles need them. They don't help narrow down a list of 100 CVs. So when you're including these, make sure you back it up by including other technical or role-specific terms, like these, especially if you are targeting the experienced hire job market. These types of words and phrases signal direct experience and familiarity with the job, or if you haven't got experience, an understanding of the job, which can be equally as important. You can also get clues for what keywords the reader might be looking for from the job description as well as the advert. If you were reading the CV, you would be looking for similarities and matches, so include as many as you can. That's why taking the time to tailor a CV to a job gets you better results than sending out hundreds of the same CV to different jobs. Why don't you try it as an experiment? Really spend time tailoring the next 5 CVs you send out and see what happens compared to when you sent out the same CV 5 times. Remember, you can get help with tailoring your CV from the careers team through the short Ask the Advisor and CV appointments, which are bookable by you on MyCareer. So it's not enough just to list the keywords and phrases and skills, you also need to show some evidence, and you do that through giving detail and some examples. So saying I'm great at planning social media campaigns doesn't prove anything, but saying I planned a social media campaign for a cancer charity as part of a student project to increase engagement of under 35s using TikTok and Instagram starts to tell a story. In a CV, you haven't got time to tell the whole story. That can be done in the interview. But a bit of detail like this gives it context and makes it believable. That's what moves your application beyond the balance of reasonable doubt. Doubt that the interview with you would waste the employer's time. So the more believable your examples are, the more likely you are to get yourself to the interview stage. Now, there are lots of ways that you can demonstrate skills and experiences on a CV. You can have a skills section, for example, and tailor the skills to the ones that are listed in the job advert. But remember to provide detail and context, especially for the transferable skills like problem solving and time management. Or you could include them in the duties section of your job, even using bold to make the matches really obvious. No one is going to mind you making it easier for them to find the information. You can also try and summarise everything in a profile or summary section and then reinforce it throughout the CV with more examples and evidence. Remember, I said this is the way I like to do it and this is how I have my CV, but how you demonstrate the skills, keywords and phrases in your CV is up to you. Just use logic and common sense to work out how to get the information across clearly and early on in the page, rather than worrying about what format you should be using. This might mean that you have a few different versions of your CV, or even could be that your CV looks different for every job that you apply for. Now, this might sound like a lot of work, but you really do get better results when you focus on quality rather than quantity of applications. The experience section of your CV is another great opportunity to tailor it to match the job that you are applying for. Using the heading Relevant Experience instead of Work Experience or Experience allows you to add any type of experience, whether it's paid or unpaid or student projects, and also allows you to use an inconsistent timeline. So more relevant work can be put higher up on the page, even if it wasn't your most recent job, making it more likely to be read by the recruiter. Also, adding in a couple of lines to summarise the role in the company before you start the bullet points is a good way to give context to what environment you are working in, but also another opportunity to include more keyword and phrase matching. You can make the same job look like many different things by adding and removing parts of the job duties, as well as changing the order of the bullet points to tailor it to what you are applying for. On the next slide are a few examples. This example shows a simple student job in a coffee shop. You would usually include all of the main tasks you did, like serving customers, stocking fridges, etc. But if you think about it, everybody knows that you do these things when you work in a coffee shop, right? So why not use that space, which is limited, to include the more interesting and relevant things you did, even if they weren't the bulk of the role, even if they weren't what you spent most of your time doing. Like this example here, where someone interested in business development took on some more salesy related tasks within the coffee shop job. Doing this shows a few different things. One, that you have a true interest in sales and business development, proven by you getting involved in things like upselling and profit and loss reports. And two, that you understand the role that you are applying for, enough to effectively tailor the CV. These are both things that employers will want to know. You can tailor each experience for many different roles. I bet if you think about everything you did in a job or a project, there's a list of 100 bullet points or more. So for each application, just include the most relevant ones. This is the information that the employer needs to see, what is relevant to the job that you are applying for. I haven't included much about CV layout in this session because we focus on tailoring, but I have covered a lot that layout and format are not what most employers really care about. They just want to know, are you a good potential match for the job, and is it a good investment of their time to interview you? However, there are some standardisations that should apply in the UK just to make life easier. We don't use photos or date of birth in the UK. That's to do with our data protection laws and our employment laws as well. People don't want to discriminate, and there's lots of things in a photo that could lead them to have unconscious bias. So leave the photo out in all UK applications. There's no need for references on a CV. They waste space and we don't want to share other people's data. If they need a reference, they'll ask you to fill in a form later on. Keep it simple. That's a rule that I made up kind of, but keep it simple, make it easy to read. Easy to read, easy on the eyes, not too squashed. If it's going to be squashed just to make it onto one page and that makes it hard to read, put it on 2 pages. And tailor to match every application. That's the main rule that you need to follow every time. I hope you found this video useful. Here are some more CV resources. There are lots more videos on the YouTube playlist here as well, and don't forget to join our International Talent Community LinkedIn group. Bye for now.